Hi, thanks for tuning in to Government Matters. I'm Meredith, the Town Council President, and today I'm really excited to introduce you to Braintree resident and realtor Christine McClellan. We're here to talk about home ownership and housing in Braintree. Thanks so much for being with us today, Christine. Maybe you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Thank you, Meredith, and thank you so much for inviting me in today. My name is Christine McClellan. I'm with William Ravis Real Estate in Hingham, Massachusetts, and I help home buyers and sellers with their residential real estate needs in and around Braintree. I've been a Braintree homeowner since 1994.
Wow.
Yeah, and prior to real estate, I worked in the internet and software industry, and what's amazing about that is I'm able to use my analysis skills every single day in this business and helping home buyers and sellers.
Well, I know you're passionate about home ownership, Christine, and one of the things that I keep hearing about, and I hear from residents as well, is about a housing shortage in the greater Boston area. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what the housing shortage means. The words are easily defined, but I think people get confused because if you have a home, it's hard to understand why there's a shortage.
There is, and that's a great question. It's something we talk about a lot. It's actually more than Braintree. It's more than the state. It's actually a national shortage. So nationally, a healthy real estate market means about 6 million housing units sell a year.
Oh, wow.
That's considered a healthy across the country by the National Association of Realtors. Right now, it looks like we're on track between about 4 million, so that means across the country we're short around 2 million units, which causes a crunch in the marketplace. People always need to move. They have life events happen. They have reasons they want to either move to another house, sell their current home for a different situation. They may be expanding a family. They may be having adults, parents moving in. There's a million reasons. There's divorce, there's sadly death, there's job changes, there's relocation, and then there's also retirement or as people are aging, going, I don't want this same place. So there's lots of reasons for people to want to move. And then there are those that are looking to get into home ownership for the first time, whether they're moving out of their their parents' home, an existing home, or an apartment. All of those things drive the real estate market. What's going on right now across the country is people are waiting. They are looking at the situation with mortgage rates, which are running around 7%. 3 years ago, that same mortgage would have been a 3% mortgage for a 30-year fixed.
So it's more expensive for people
to
take out a mortgage, to get a loan.
To get a loan,
yeah.
Exactly. And what that means are people going, well, if I'm going to finance my next purchase or my first purchase, that's a lot more money than it was 3 years ago, even if the home price was the same, which of course it's not, it's gone up. People are waiting. Can I wait? Can I renovate? Can I add on to my house? Am I able to expand my house or rearrange my house to bring in more people or make it more usable?
So it sounds like there's not as much mobility with people moving around because there's not enough inventory as well?
When they're not, that's exactly. What happens is because folks that own homes currently are choosing not to move as frequently, and across the country and even more in the Northeast in Massachusetts and Braintree, is we have very little new construction happening. New home builds have been down. They've increased a little bit since the pandemic. During the pandemic, it was terrible because of the cost of lumber and also the cost of, things are just tough, as we all know. Home builds across the country have gone up a little bit, but not so much in places like Braintree because we don't really have the land or the places to build new construction. So we're working with an aging housing stock.
Yeah.
Most of us purchase homes that are older than we are when we buy them for the first time and work on those homes. So a lot of folks are renovating instead of moving. If they want a bigger home, they're adding on. If they want a smaller home, they're just waiting and they're hoping in their forecast to go down too. The interest rates are forecast to go down, and the industry is expecting once mortgage rates get around 5%, people will start moving again in a bigger way.
And I know in Braintree, as you said, there's not a whole lot of buildable space left. And one of the things that the state has asked communities like Braintree that have access to the MBTA is to make it easier to build housing by the MBTA. If residents have seen me out and about and talking about the MBTA communities law, this is something that is going to be required of Braintree to make it easier to build multifamily homes by the T, specifically by the MBTA station. So how do you see something like this new law, Christine, coming into play? How do you think that will impact Braintree, either in a positive way or hopefully add some more housing?
Honestly, I do think it's a positive way. With properties being located closer to the MBTA, it makes it a more walkable, a more accessible place to be. Whether that is, if you have to drive to take public transit and pay to park, that's a pain in the butt, right?
Yes, it is.
It just is. If you can walk or occasionally walk or take a bus to get to public transit, whether that's the subway or commuter rail, you have more options. It also allows people to maybe not own two cars and maybe have one car for a family, if it's a family, or be more car-free, which reduces the impact to our roads, to our traffic, and also lowers their cost, because if you don't own a car or own fewer cars, you can afford more house.
That's a great point I had never thought of, because I know also, one of the goals of the MBTA Communities Act that was signed by Governor Baker in 2021 is to also propel some climate change initiatives. So reducing emissions is also, by living close to the T, one of the goals. And I hadn't even thought about reducing your costs as well. Which is a great segue, because I know I keep seeing home prices rise in Braintree. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how adding additional housing, as we're going to be compelled to do, how will that impact my property values or your property values?
To be determined, but they shouldn't go down. Over the last 16 years at least, Braintree home prices have been above the state average sale price for single-family homes at the very least, because it's easier to measure. So for the last 16 years, we're a more desirable community. People want to live here. We have a low tax rate. We have access, obviously, the MBTA, as well as highways. We have industry. We have shopping.
Don't forget about Beld.
We love Beld.
Yes, we have municipal utilities. So.
And we love Beld, because I've actually had people move out of Braintree, sell their homes, move somewhere else, and say they want to come back for the reliable electricity. And I laugh about it, but I love Beld. I'm as a homeowner, knowing that if the power goes out, it's likely going to be fixed quickly, because the folks are local, is something we just don't really talk about when we buy a house in Braintree, because you have good electricity. Sounds kind of crazy, but it's really true.
I think it really matters to people, and like you, when I'm out and talking to people in the community, that is one of the reasons I hear that people move here into Braintree, and because it is such a great benefit of living, one of the many benefits of living in Braintree.
And when you look around the greater South Shore, you'll see a lot of homes selling. Features include a whole house generator.
Oh, wow, yeah.
A lot of them includes a generator, and what happens is most people who have a generator have had a problem.
Yep, like my parents who don't live in Braintree anymore. So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
So what they do is they purchase a whole house generator, which has pros and cons. It does add value a little bit to their home when they go to sell, but isn't it better that we hopefully don't ever need to invest in one?
Right. Yeah, and I want to go back to thinking about, I know one of the things you talked about, and I also hear from residents, is just the need for different options, what I would call housing options. So I hear a lot from folks whose children are grown and they really, really want to stay in Braintree. It's so important for them to stay in Braintree, but they don't need a 3 or 4 or even more bedroom house, and they maybe don't want to maintain a lawn. And then I hear from the other side of the spectrum, grown children who are maybe just graduated from college and really, really want to move back to Braintree and can't find anything, either the size they want, the price range that they want. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how, something like the MBTA communities, how you see that playing out with providing options and maybe either as a springboard to a different kind of house or helping to free up some inventory in town.
Well, there's a few things in all of that. One is, let's talk a little bit about, we started on housing shortages.
Yeah.
In Braintree, we have over 10,000 properties that people can, not counting, I'm not talking about apartments, to be purchased, either single family, condo/townhouse, same thing, or a multifamily unit. In real estate or in the mortgage business, anything between that has 2, 3, or 4 units is considered residential. It's financed with a residential mortgage. So that means mere mortals like you and I, without going down big investment paths of commercial mortgages, can purchase that kind of property. And that's a great way to build. Home ownership throughout is the best way in this country to build wealth.
Yeah.
But if you're able to purchase something that not only is maintaining value and growing value, but if you're able to purchase an income-producing property you live in, whether that's 2, 3, or 4 units, that's incredible, because especially if you're just kind of starting out and you're able to scrape enough together to get that first let's say two-family, we'll keep it simple. When you're ready for something else, you can make that a full income property if you choose to, or sell it and invest that money into your next property. There's a lot of options there. But we don't have a lot of multifamily, residential 2, 3, and 4 family properties in Braintree. It's only about 5.5% of the total properties in the entire town. So I'm not talking about apartment building, I'm talking about, and those are the residential sizes. That's pretty small.
Yeah, that's really small. And when you were talking about, you're saying that it's sometimes helpful for people if they purchase a multifamily home, they live in one unit and rent out the other 1, 2, or 3 units, which helps them also pay off the mortgage.
Right, they're helping to pay the mortgage, absolutely. The median sales price right now for average sales price for the 8 multifamily homes that have sold in Braintree this year was, the average price is $838,000.
Oh, wow.
However, the average median sales price for a single family home in Braintree is $688,000. So there's not much of a stretch between those two, if you look at it that way. And certainly there's a huge price range in Braintree from, say, $400,000, which is, most of those are torn down, to well over $1 million. There's a huge range, but this is a high price.
Yeah, and I remember speaking to you before, and you were telling me, and there's just not a lot of available properties for people who either, like we talked about, want to downsize, or their children want to move back, or maybe they need to bring in elderly parents and get a little bit bigger, and there's just not a lot of properties
there. There's about 14 single-family homes on the market right now, and 3 condos. And about 4 multifamilies, which is a little higher, but they're at a higher price point.
Yeah.
So that's not a lot. That's very few homes that could be purchased. So what ends up happening is folks, either they don't buy in Braintree, or they try to wait, or they do something and go, well, what do I do? They do try. Folks do want to be here, right? We know we want to be here. We've chosen to live here, and we want more folks to be able to live here, so let's help make that possible. But it's a lot of money when you look at that. Also, when we talk a little about multifamily. One thing that I did a little research on how the current multifamilies are in town, and almost half, 48%, are owner occupied. So when you think about that, that means the landlord lives there too.
Yeah.
So
they're invested in their property, and again, you were talking about multifamily, you're talking about duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great benefit as well, because
pride of ownership.
Thank you for taking the words right out of my mouth. And as you said, how can we make it easier for people? And I know one of the specific properties that's going to be involved with the MBTA Communities Act, which again will make it easier to build multifamily housing in Braintree, is the Armstrong Industry site where the Manatequit River is getting restored. I know one of our favorite projects in town.
Yes.
With that river restoration. Maybe you can talk about a little bit how you would see the benefits of a property like that close to South Braintree Square and soon to be green space. Yeah.
As someone who lives very close to the Armstrong property, I cannot wait. I'm looking forward to walks around there. I can't wait I've seen the mock-ups. It'll be beautiful. So I think we said that property is about 28 acres?
It's about 25 acres. 26 acres.
Not all usable, right. So, and when looking at the MBTA, I think from reading the details, it needs to be zoned with some sort of density.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the lowest was about 15 acres.
The lowest for the MBTA Communities Act is 15 units per acre, and it's really hard to visualize that.
It is.
But sometimes a triple decker on a smaller lot is 15 units per acre.
And if you think about that, what that might look like. So let's say a maximum of 20 acres really could be developed. Like if you think about traffic and green space and everything else. And if we looked at the lower end, again, I'm not a zoning expert,
right.
But if we look at that,
certainly.
15 times 20 would be about 300 housing units.
Yep.
However that's defined, whether that's single family, condo, multifamily, townhouses.
Yep.
Yeah, it could be anything. And that's about the same size of units as the Jonathan's Landing across the street. And as someone who commutes past there frequently, not that you see a lot of people coming and going, so that's actually a pretty good analogy if you think about that and the folks and how that could be spread out across that property. It could be very beautiful. And I do hope when we get there, if that ends up happening and becomes developed, we're able to work with some of the state agencies like Mass Housing or NeighborWorks that create incentives to enable first-time home buyers to buy those type of properties. This is not about affordable housing, but it's incentives to either down payment assistance or I think they both offer education opportunities for people who think they want to be landlords.
Oh, that's
they
great
have some
to know.
Great options for folks that want to go down that path. Because right now in Braintree, we only sell on average 11 multifamilies a year.
Yeah, so it's not a lot.
It's not a lot.
And I think the other thing that I like to think about with that property in particular and the soon-to-be green space there is also desirable from a walkability standpoint to supporting our thriving family businesses in South Braintree Square, which really helps with foot traffic for our small business owners who make that square unique and special.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of what I really like to remind people, and thank you for helping me, Christine, is, multifamily housing doesn't mean giant towers. It can be anything from a, modest triple decker to a series of townhouses that I think are really become like a neighborhood.
Correct. And if we are able to encourage owner occupants in those units, they're going to have the pride of ownership everywhere. We're not working with corporations in the middle of the country or somewhere else that are buying thousands of units a year. If we're able to build incentives, this is again way after the zoning happens.
Yes. Yeah.
But there are some amazing programs for first-time home buyers, which more people could take advantage of if we had more property.
That's a great point.
They're out there.
Yes, you can't use the program if there's nowhere for you to purchase or to buy. And I think the other thing that you brought up that's really important to remind people of is this is a long process. Development takes a long time, and you said at the beginning there was a shortage essentially of 2 million homes nationwide. So for the local level in Braintree, this process, the first step in the process is for the council to adopt the MBTA community zones and the act that we're planning to do, which is will be around the Red Line station. then all of that property is private property. So it takes a long time for those properties to, either be sold or have some kind of property agreement, and then a plan has to be agreed on, and then it has to be worked out through the community process, and then it has to be developed. So I think, there's people I know that I speak to all the time that are anxious to get into a smaller house, like we talked about downsizing or moving back to Braintree. But I also want to remind people that development takes a long, long time, sometimes longer than we want. I found out the Armstrong Dam removal process has been going on for 17 years before
now
they took the dam down 2 weeks ago. Yeah, or 3 weeks ago.
That's amazing.
So sometimes these things feel like they're moving very fast, but it does take time for new development to happen.
Right, and there's a lot to be done on those sites, even if they could. It was all approved and ready to go today. Not that any of that's even in the works. It's going to take a while.
Yeah.
I do think there's opportunity to make it a much prettier part of town.
And potentially even add green space to where there's rubble today. And I think that's another thing. And, maybe you can add some of your experience, Christine, with what people are looking for. But today, some of that property at the Armstrong Industries site is a lot of asphalt and a lot of rubble, and we will have the opportunity to potentially, even though it's getting redeveloped, add greenery, add trees, add this path at the Manaticlet River.
Add a path that gets you to close to South Braintree Square. Can't cross the river that way, but get close to South Braintree Square, get closer to be able to go to the restaurants, be able to get there. If we have nice wide sidewalks, nice good walkways, all of that would really help. People do, home buyers do want to drive less.
Yeah.
And right now, a lot of our newer homes aren't near either newer homes or newer multifamily. Actually, no, the only new multifamilies are near South Braintree Square, but the newer homes aren't anywhere near South Braintree Square, any of our town squares, or really very much near the MBTA.
And I know one thing I've been learning about is this idea of a walk score.
Yes.
That seems like it's a good thing for property values.
People do want, that's, Braintree is not a planned community, right? We're from the 1630, right?
40, I think.
40.
Yeah. What's 10 years among friends?
A long time. It's almost 400 years.
Yeah.
So our paths and roads, were not developed with any sort of planning, community planning. So
right, of course not, yeah.
So you'll have these neighborhoods that are kind of islands that aren't. Some areas are hugely walkable amongst neighborhoods where you can do things. Others aren't. And others are sort of plopped off a main road and you're like, I don't know. Where can I go? Where can I walk to? People do want that. They also want to make sure wherever they purchase, there's a huge number of people that do want access to the MBTA bus. And we have bus, but we don't have a ton of bus routes.
Yeah.
And that's to get you to the T or to get you to somewhere else. So people want this, but they don't necessarily, it's harder to find. And that's not unique to Braintree. It's a lot of our towns because they're basically cow paths.
Old cow paths that have turned into roads, that have turned into neighborhoods, and now we have an opportunity to continue that process in Braintree with the MBTA community.
Which is really cool because you do have homes next to each other that are drastically different. And that's when folks relocate from other parts of the country to the Northeast. They're confused.
That's what they like, right?
Well, they're used to, neighborhoods. Every house in this neighborhood has over 2,000 square feet. Every house has two-car garage. It's all the same. But you don't have that here. You've got a 2,000 square foot home, a 1,300 square foot home, and two-family all on the same block, which is awesome.
I know that we could talk about this and go on, but believe it or not, our time is up. And I want to thank you again, Christine, for lending your expertise and your time this afternoon, and hopefully this will be one of many conversations we have.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This was awesome.
My pleasure. And again, this is Meredith Berica, and thank you so much for watching Government Matters, and we'll see you soon.